So here we are, back out on the bike. And it seems like it's been a really long time. And I think it's been about 2 weeks. Which for me is a long time. Apart from a little short ride out in the icy conditions. So the plan today is not to go too far. More importantly, not to go too fast. This is what Strava would call a recovery ride, I think. And it's not warm, not by any stretch, but it's not icy. It's not freezing cold like it was last week. And this is the supermarket entrance. And it's coming up towards Christmas. And I think the law says you have to go to the shops if it's just before Christmas. So yes, it's not cold, or not freezing cold anyway. It is very wet. But I've looked at the forecast and I'm hoping to get round the course without actually getting rained on. I know it's a bit optimistic, but there we go. So yes, as I said, this is what Strava would refer to as a recovery ride. Because Strava is quite diplomatic. It says, you weren't going very fast today. If this was a recovery ride, keep it up. But what it doesn't say is, if this wasn't a recovery ride, you've been a bit of a lazy bastard. Well, I think that's quite diplomatic. Because it's implied. Well, I took up cycling because I thought I really needed to. I was starting to suffer serious health issues. Having been a cyclist before, it just seemed like the logical thing to do, without realising that I was jumping into an absolute snake pit. It really amazed me, and it still amazes me now. The absolute hatred of cyclists. And for no real reason. Just because they exist. As I've said before, it's that British thing. If I don't do something, nobody else should be allowed to. A couple of weeks ago when I was out, going down the road at about 25 miles an hour. And a taxi pulled out the side road straight in front of me. Rather than slam on the brakes, which is never a good option, I moved across to the middle of the road. And just sort of stayed close to the white line until the taxi had built up speed and I could drop back in behind. So I put a little clip up on the Facebook, on the Bridgend group. I thought, just a little amusing comment. I said, Looks like taxi drivers don't have to wait for other traffic. That's all I said. And the backlash was huge. I thought it was just a little amusing comment. You know, like when somebody turns left off a roundabout that you're waiting at without indicating. And you say, oh, I see BMW drivers don't need to indicate. That sort of comment. Well, the backlash was huge. Oh dear, it started to rain. I was hoping to get away with that. Somebody called me a self-entitled wanker, purely for being a cyclist. I am finding it a bit hard today, but I expected that. Anyway, back to the video clip. Somebody said he hates all cyclists because they go through red lights. Somebody else created his own little story of how I was everything that was wrong with cycling or cyclists. Because according to him, I tried to overtake the taxi to show him who was boss. In a macho way. But in the end, the taxi had beaten me. And somebody else commented, quite simply, they just said, you're in the wrong. And that was interesting to me. So I answered with a question. I said, please could you explain your interpretation of the highway code that leads you to believe I'm in the wrong. And that comment was removed by the admin people who said, be kind and be nice. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Turns out calling someone a self-entitled wanker is perfectly acceptable, but asking somebody to explain why they think you're wrong isn't. The irony is, the one who called me a self-entitled wanker is himself self-entitled. Because he believes he should be allowed to drive his car without being held up by other road users. So I decided not to comment anymore. And let people carry on spreading their vitriol and hatred, because you're not going to change them, no matter how much you try and reason. And in fact, somebody who hates people just for the sake of hating them is probably not that bright anyway. So you're definitely not going to be able to reason with them. Well, the forecast was dry for the next couple of hours, so I should have known and brought my rain jacket. I should have realised if the forecast was dry, it was going to be torrential rain. And it quite literally is torrential rain today. You see, this is me going through a red light because I'm a cyclist.